Hi everyone, welcome to Mobility Matters. From your local voices to shared solutions, we are bridging the gaps that matter. We will bring you real stories, real challenges, and real solutions about transportation in rural Oklahoma. I'm your host, Christy Williams, Mobility Navigator for Southwest Oklahoma. And in each episode, we highlight voices navigating the roadblocks and building the bridges that get people where they need to go. Whether you're the rider, a provider, or a policymaker, this podcast is your place to connect, learn, and join the movement for mobility. So buckle up, grab your coffee, and let's go. Hello everyone. Today we're talking with Angela Plumley, Executive Director for the Department of Transportation at Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes. For this podcast, we want to get a closer look at how Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Transit operate, the challenges they face, and what exciting projects are on the horizon. Angela, thanks for joining us. Let's start with a little bit of background.
Okay, well, thank you for having us. Welcome to our facility.
Thank you.
Because we want to showcase what we're doing with the tribes and the funding that we do receive, whether it's from the Tribal Transportation Program or the Tribal Transit Program. But yes, background on the Tribal Transit Program. For the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes, and this is prior to me becoming the director of the program, the tribes did operate a tribal transit program from 2000 to 2005. The funds that we received at that time were for operating to manage a fixed route services, and that was under the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Since then, the program has Federal Transit Administration starting setting aside funds specifically for tribes. So we did have our services were not available to tribal members or the general public from 2005 until about 2010, so 5 years. However, there was some work that I had to do when I became program director in 2008. I immediately knew there was a need, knowing that, as a young adult at the time, single parent, I did use the transit services from 2000 and 2005 when it was operated under my predecessor. And so I seen the benefits from that. And so when that gap happened, I knew there were probably other people in our area that needed the services that I was using and benefiting from, and I knew it could meet their needs. So when I became director, the funds had changed the direction they were going. In 2008, we applied for a planning grant, which is you identify your plan and how you're going to provide those services. We developed the grant. The grant was geared toward demand response. At that time, we were told in the grant writing process that we couldn't duplicate services that existed within our service area. So we found out there were already other transit providers in our service area. So we had to go back to the drawing board and rewrite the grant to say, okay, we'll do a fixed route service. And so we wrote it for 4 routes. The tribes have a 9-county service area. And so we wanted to incorporate all the rural areas that we could. And we knew that our Concho location is our central campus where most of the services are provided. So we definitely wanted those routes to bring people to Concho campus. So the 4 routes were geared toward that. We also applied for a capital assistance grant, which would allow us to purchase the 4 vehicles that we needed to deploy. And then we also applied for an operating grant, and that would pay for the salaries and the fuel, the things to help ensure that the plan was, seen through. So 2008, we were awarded the planning grant. We drafted our plan. 2009, we were awarded the capital assistance grant to purchase the vehicles. In 2010, we received a operating grant that would get us, get the services going. So that led to us deploying the 4 fixed routes in December of 2010. I always say, because that was one of the first things I did when I became a program director, because before that I started the tribes, low maintenance total pole, entry-level position, administrative assistant, moved up to project manager, did some special projects, started in the housing, came to transportation, and transportation has just been in my blood since. So when I look back at those accomplishments, I always say transit is my baby, because it was the first thing I did as a program director that I'm very proud of, and to see it succeed throughout the past 15 years that we've been sustaining the services, even when COVID hit. But I'm very proud to be a part of that and provide a service I know that our tribal members benefit from.
And I think you brought a key issue to heart when you were talking at the beginning, is that you had relied on public transit whenever you had first started and before this program even existed. And so using that passion really pushed you to really make this a success that it is today.
Yes, I always try my best to relate to the tribal members, understanding that they come from all types of backgrounds. You know, they may have issues with getting groceries or getting to a medical appointment, getting to childcare. That was my biggest challenge when I was going through that. And I lived in Watauga, would commute to here at Concho just to come to work, getting my children to childcare. Because I didn't have transportation. And so using the transit really helped me relate to the tribal members and understanding how big of a challenge it is for them, because we're a prideful people and we're not used to asking for help. We're not looking for a handout, but a little something to make it easier for us.
Not a handout, a hand up.
Yes.
I think a lot of people feel like your public transit is only for your low income or your old people. I think we've mentioned this before in other transit conversations, but it's really for anybody that is going through that moment to where they need that little bit of assistance for transportation, or maybe they don't want to drive. Maybe they're scared to drive to certain areas, or maybe they shouldn't be driving, and public transit would be the best bet for them.
Agreed. And we do have some of those instances. You know, some people have disabilities. And so thankfully we have vehicles in our fleet of our transit program that have the handicap accessible ramps, things of that nature. And we are able to meet some of those medical transport for like dialysis or even grocery shopping. And yeah, we have some guidelines that we have to abide by, but we are open to the public. I think that's one of the misconceptions. Yes, we receive this funding to provide a service to our tribal members, but because it's federal funds, we can't restrict it just to our tribal members. It is open to the public, and we welcome the public to use our services. But I will say 95% of our ridership is tribal members, but that doesn't mean that someone that's not a tribal member cannot benefit from our services.
Right. And I think that's a big misconception a lot of times, because I get phone calls all the time, and when I refer them to Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Transit, they're like, wait a minute, I'm not tribal. And I was like, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
You can still ride it. So what is your vision or mission that guides your transportation efforts for not only, like we talked about before, not only your tribal members, but also the general public? What's your mission statement, so to speak?
Okay, so our mission statement for the Department of Transportation, it was long, and we really cut it down. And so I have these postcards that we created for our transit program because we just deployed a third fixed route. And so on there it says, improving safety, every tribal member, every trip. As a individual that has gone through the transportation process of planning things out, planning these projects out, planning the transit program out, we always look at how we're making it safe for our tribal members to get from point A to point B. So we look at the vehicle. Is it safe to operate? Does it need the tires changed? Do we need to do preventive maintenance? And so that mission, it's almost like a circle. It comes back to that we're providing a safe mode of transportation. And we definitely want to make sure every ride that our individuals that are riding our transit gets there safely. Right now, we do have a shortage in drivers, shortage of vehicles.
And that's everywhere.
Yes. And so trying to plan ahead for that, we thought we did. We always think you're planning ahead for these issues, and then you get into the middle of it and you're like, okay, we need to get more drivers. And so we recently this year, we did some advertising for drivers, and that doubled our numbers. We went from 3 drivers to 6 drivers. And great, now we have a third fixed route. Now we're facing the challenge of getting vehicles, which is unfortunate because, we're trying to keep up with the needs, planning ahead to try to plan for those needs. So meeting those tribal members' needs is always in the back of my mind. And like I said before, relating to them, being more accessible to our tribal members. We did a recent community outreach, and we went out to the rural communities where we know that tribal members have issues with transportation, and letting them know, hey, we're still here and we are making plans to come into your communities, but also reassure them that we hear what the needs are.
And I think that's important for your rural communities to feel a part of a program. If they feel a part of a program, they're more apt to use the program.
Yes.
Because they've had input in it.
Yes.
I've noticed, even just going up and down the highways, seeing the Cheyenne and Arapaho advertisements on the billboards, and whether it is for some of your programs that you have within the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes, but everything. It's just a lot more social media aspects, more advertising and marketing, and I think it's great.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we have tried our best to get into the avenue, and we're just now getting into that, and we're seeing the results of that as we're doing more of the promotion and marketing and saying, hey, we're here, and doing these postcard type materials with a QR code, our logo on it, the routes, the maps of the routes. We're really seeing the benefits of marketing our program. We really try to bring that barrier down, that wall down, to say, oh, we're working independently over here with our funds. And now we're referring a lot of our clients to those counterparts, those other agencies in our service area.
You guys are actually working together to make this a more collaborative process that's going to hopefully meet the needs of the clients, because all of these programs that they're advertising on the billboards, probably the root of the difficulty of getting these clients to these different programs is going to be transportation.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to be at the table in order to provide the services to all these clients that are going to desperately need it.
Yes. I always say we're the low man on the totem pole. We have our education program doing great, our health programs, Indian Health Services. They definitely use us for medical transport. They're realizing the role that we play in filling those gaps that they have. So.
Because the barrier is going to be transportation to getting to these appointments. So I'll go a little bit further. What are some of the biggest transportation challenges that Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Transit program actually faces on a day-to-day basis? What is some of your challenges?
Okay, so meeting our transport requests, some of the needs on a daily basis. Again, we're short drivers, we're short vehicles. We definitely have a plan to deploy more vehicles, to hire more drivers. We do have goals to deploy 2 more fixed routes. So right now we have 3 fixed routes. Eventually we want to have 5 fixed routes. The tribes have just recently added Woodward County to our service area. And so we'll eventually be adding that to our service area. We have a significant number of tribal members in the city of Woodward, Oklahoma, and we have a facility there. We have a lot of tribal members that have a need from the main Concho campus to the town of El Reno that come from Oklahoma City. So that will have a standalone route. Right now it's incorporated into Concho, Oklahoma City, El Reno, and then our transfer location at one of the tribal facilities along I-40. And so one of the other challenges, which I'm glad we're not seeing a high turnover in, is driver retention. So minimum wage, I don't know how a transit program survives at minimum wage. It is hard to keep a transit driver if we're not at a competitive wage. And so they find positions that
pay more.
They're going to leave us.
Yeah.
And so we're coming up with ways to incentivize them, recognize them for accomplishments, reward them, merit, or pay increases, things of that nature. We do our best. I know our transit program director, which I haven't mentioned yet, Ms. Wilma Tapa, when we see that impacting our program, we sit down and meet and say, okay, what can we do and how can we make it happen to ensure they're not walking out the door and going somewhere else? But driver retention has always been one of our challenges, and she's done a good job of working to ensure we're making those employees happy or enjoying their job so that we're not losing them, that we're keeping them. And even though we promote within and we encourage advancement, transit drivers, once they built that rapport with the individuals on their routes and their services,
it's their family.
Yeah, they become like second nature and become really close for the clients. It makes them feel more comfortable to see the same person over and over. So,
it absolutely does. And I'll comment on Wilma. I have worked with her since I started this. And she has been wonderful at helping me when I need it, but I'm also going to help her anytime she calls. I'm going to try to help her with anything that she does, because she does put her heart and soul into this. And she does try. And you're not the only one that has the difficulty with driver retention. Every one of our transit agencies have the same issue, because the sad part is they can go to McDonald's and flip burgers for more money 90% of the time.
Yep.
And it's difficult, and you don't blame them. I mean, it's like almost like a repetitive record when I go talk to transit agencies. It's like, well, I had so-and-so come by and said they got offered more money and they're leaving me, and I hate to see them go, but I don't blame them. Right. And so that's the general consensus. And it is difficult to keep someone, and you don't blame them.
Yep. Yeah, no, they have their own families have to provide for, so we understand it.
So you've kind of touched on this already about the type of services and the routes. Are there specific counties, specific route areas that you want to kind of let people know what your service area is?
Yes, there are plans that, we do, like I said, 5 routes eventually. We just recently started the Oklahoma City route in July of this year. And that's because the tribes have acquired a facility in Oklahoma City, and it's called the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal facility in Oklahoma City. And it's right off the Meridian and I-40. And so we did a bus route there, and it's bringing individuals from Oklahoma City to El Reno to Concho, and then back from Concho to El Reno, Oklahoma City. And so it's meeting those that need to come and apply for assistance through the tribes. Or if they have an appointment at the El Reno IHS, they can go there. We do have a stop there. And then they can transfer. And so the other routes that we cover are along I-40. They go all the way out to Elk City and Hammond. And so those have been in existence. We had 2 routes before July of this year. And that was the Hammond, Elk City to Clinton to Weatherford site. And then we have Sealing, Oklahoma, that runs to Canton, Watauga, Gary area, and would bring people here to Concho. And so that still exists. The tribes recently built a travel center at Exit 108. It has a small casino, a cafe, a convenience store, gas station, but it's the Calumet Travel Center. And it's a Lucky Star Casino affiliated facility. But that's where we transfer. And prior to that, we were transferring at Exit 101 in Hinton, Oklahoma at the Loves. Mm-hmm. And so to have a tribal facility along the route that we can actually use that's tribally related, it makes it so much easier, because before when you create a stop at a location, you have to get permission.
Right.
And so, being able to do that within our own tribal lands and our own tribal facilities makes it easier for us, because we have had locations that we wanted to put on our fixed route and been denied. We know that tribal members would really benefit at one facility. If we put a stop there and we're like, okay, we're just going to stop there for 5 minutes, let people get on, come back, and then we'll stop there again, let people get off. And some businesses, whatever the decision, whatever their reason is for deciding against it, some of them, and it's only been a few, that have declined that. And so it makes it a challenge when you have to.
And that's good to know, like when people start coming at some of these programs like Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes, well, why don't you put a stop here? That would be so helpful. Yes. There are reasons behind not being able to put a stop at every location that the public might want.
I didn't think about that until I just started thinking about that, but you're right. And we do get some tribal members that, I want to say complain, but
express concern.
Yes, they do express themselves, and why don't you stop here? And Some of it is the business or the company, the agency, whatever. They have made the choice to not allow us.
Yes.
And so we have to get permission. And so thankfully, like the Walmarts, they don't have an issue with it. So we do have a stop here in El Reno Walmart. The Domino's in Clinton is on our route. And most of the other stops are along like tribal facilities. We have all of our Indian health services along our routes. We have 3 that service our area. Clinton is our service unit. So we have one at Clinton, the Watonga Indian Health Service in Watonga, Oklahoma, and then the El Reno Indian Health Service here in El Reno, Oklahoma. All those IHS facilities are along our
And that's
route.
awesome. Because like I said, you're trying to get locations to where your clients could potentially be able to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I was very excited when I knew that your route went all the way from Hammond and connected all the way to Oklahoma City, because I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's such a huge impact into our community.
I'm always expressing that. Do you know you can get on our bus at Elk City or Hammond and get transfer at exit 108, one of our tribal facilities, transfer and get all the way to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
You can get on at Sealing, Oklahoma and transfer and get all the way to Oklahoma City and back.
I had a client that it was a tribal member, and we were working through her appointment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. It stops at this time. That gives you this amount of time to go to your appointment, be able to get back to catch the ride on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a matter of, let's look at the timeline and see. So in reality, many of your tribal members could schedule an appointment around that fixed route to ensure getting to a lot of these facilities and locations.
Yes, that is probably one of the things we do need to do more of. We see improvement for is educating our tribal members, providing that knowledge base to help explain the thoughts that could fit them. And honestly, that would help with demand response, because unfortunately, one of the challenges we do have is, and we don't like doing it, is declining some of the services for demand response, because people want that one-on-one,
Right.
that one vehicle to service them and get them there and get back. Our demand response has a 2-hour limit wait time, and sometimes it gets over that, and so it impacts our drivers and their hours that they're putting in. But if we educated our tribal members or there's just a general public on our fixed route services, their stops, you're right. We could help them schedule their appointments where they could use the fixed route and not so much reliance on the demand response. And that would free up some of the issues we're having with demand response as far as meeting some of those transport requests.
And I think that we use the term demand response, but some people may not know what that means.
Right.
So what is demand response?
So in my eyes, demand response is providing a transport that meets or fits your schedule, almost. But the other thing I want to reiterate, that misconceptions, we're not a taxi service.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we do door-to-door like a taxi service, but the taxi service has a fare that they charge. We don't charge a fare. We do have guidelines and requirements of the program that from the funding source that we receive our funding from that we have to adhere to, that we have to stay in line with. And so we can't go beyond state lines. We can go off of our service area, like our fixed route goes to Oklahoma City, because we know that we have tribal members that are trying to reach services. And so, yes, going back to demand response and your question, it's providing that service based on your need.
And I will also say kind of on that, I know that I believe, what is it, a 72-hour window that you need to know?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, the sooner you know you need an appointment, the sooner you get on the list. Because if you guys, and I know you are because I've called, but you build that list way in advance of a 3-day notice.
Yes, we changed our call-in time from 24 hours to 72 hours because, again, it's all about your capacity. We are limited drivers, we are limited vehicles, so that limits how many transports we can provide. We have 3 drivers for demand response, but sometimes those drivers have to cover a fixed route. They're the backup driver for the fixed route. So, one employee calls in, one of our demand response drivers will have to cover that route so that we don't have to, so we don't have to shut down the whole route, because you never know how many people rely on that. But when we get back to the demand response, they're almost able to provide 2 transports a day. So one driver can do 2 transports a day. If we're open 5 days a week, that's 10 transports in a week. We would love to provide more, but it's best to call as soon as you know and get on the schedule, because it's sometimes not guaranteed if you wait till the 72 hours before an appointment, because our drivers' schedules are already full.
Right.
And so the more we've been doing more community outreach, I've been expressing to tribal members and the general public, like, don't wait 72 hours before appointment. Sometimes it's best to do it 2 weeks out. If you know a month ahead, go ahead and call us and get on the schedule. Once you are scheduled for transport, they do give a confirmation number.
Right.
And they will call a day ahead to remind you of your transport. And that's one of the things that we're looking forward in the future, is having a texting system to verify appointments, to verify transport requests. So
that's awesome.
Yes. And, we really hate having to decline services.
Yes.
And so we do try to work with the other agencies. We have a program within the tribes called the Community Health Representative, CHR program, that also provides transports.
Yes.
And so through that coordinated effort, we work closely with them with some of the transportation needs that we're seeing with our clients. And vice versa. CHR will call us to help with transport. We have an EMS program. We have a veterans program that does transports for veterans. We'll be doing more educating or coordinating with the programs to see what other areas we can grow into, because I am a firm believer that we're the Department of Transportation, that we should be providing all the transport services for our tribal members.
Do you have anything, like any additional goals that you have for the future of Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Transit?
Aside from the text messaging app that we hope to incorporate here in the near future, it's one of our goals. As you know, our main transit office, they were operating out of Clinton, Oklahoma. We moved to Weatherford in 2021, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But we used our funding, our tribal transportation program funds, to acquire that land, that property, with the facility on it, in the goal to renovate it so that it could service as a transit hub to do preventive maintenance internally within our own tribe and maintain our own vehicles. So, because one of the requirements of the federal funding is that we must maintain the vehicles in a state of good repair. And what does that mean? Oil changes, tire changes, doing tune-ups, making sure our drivers are required to do daily inspections, pre and post inspections. That's where they find if their vehicle needs attention. And we want to not only increase the services, but provide employment. And auto mechanics, that would be another area of employment if we're able to build our facilities to have vehicle bays. So yes, Weatherford location, our goal is to renovate it. There's a big shop on half of their building.
Yes.
Our goal is always to make it a vehicle bay so that we can service our own vehicles internally, create auto mechanic positions that will fall under the transit program to service our tribal vehicles. Because the more we grow, the more vehicles we acquire, the more costs we're seeing to preventative maintenance to maintain the vehicles in a state of good repair. And so there is a goal to renovate the Weatherford facility that will be happening hopefully in the next 2 years. I know woman's been waiting. But also recently, I put in a request for another facility that the tribes already own in Canton, Oklahoma. Went out and looked at it, did a site visit, and was like, can we tear this down and start build from the ground up a new facility that would serve as a hub for the Canton community, and also create jobs in the Canton community. And of course, thankfully, we have the support of our legislative and executive branches that through resolutions, when we adopt a plan, they review that plan, and I have to go over these projects with them and say, okay, this is for this need. And the Canton facility is one of those that was listed on our transportation plan, and we specifically requested that it would be used for the transit program to grow. We are seeing the need to grow into that community, again, rural area, outlying community. So we're really anxious for the future and moving in that direction to meet our tribal needs. And of course, that means we'll have to apply for grants. And
Right.
so we're ready for that. We have experience with some of my staff in grant writing. I mentioned some of the grants that we wrote in the early stages, 2008, 9, 10, to get the grant, to get transit off the ground. And so we're gearing up for some applications. The uncertainty is the funding. And so
Yes.
it depends on where the next transportation bill, the direction of the next
Yes.
transportation bill.
I know we keep going back to collaboration, but that's one of the things that's unique. I feel, and maybe I'm just partial to Western Oklahoma or, the west part of Oklahoma, is that we do want to work together. And one of the things we visited about the grant we're going after, SWOTA is going after, Southwestern Oklahoma Development Authority. But one of the things that we want to do with that is sit down with our transit partners and find out what is it that you're wanting. So your infrastructure, put this in our plan. So that gives you the bonus points to go after the grants you want to go after and really highlight some of the things that each one of our transits are really looking for, because it's just a planning grant. It's not anything that we can build with, but it is something that you guys can use to go after the grants you need to actually make your dream a reality.
And I would agree with you that when we go after grants, there are times that we need those letters of support. And it just shows that we are striving to collaborate, coordinate with other agencies. And we've always been told that the group that reviews those grants, they see that it's a plus.
Yes.
It's a plus because they see that we're not the only ones invested into
Right.
that
And that
goal.
we're actually wanting to work together
Yes.
in a community, because to make something sustainable, you have to have a group of support that's going to make that sustainable.
Ever since I became a director in 2008, I've always said I'm an advocate for pooling resources.
Yes.
And one of the first things I had to do is go meet with the county commissioners so that I could identify routes that I wanted to put in our transportation plan. And there were routes that I knew tribal members used to get to these services. And that right there was my first learning lesson of how to collaborate with other agencies. And that was early on.
Yes.
And from that, I built relationships with a lot of the county commissioners that we serve in, mainly the three counties that we do a lot of work with on the roads side, not to get away from transit.
Right.
But
But that's your
it's
transportation.
a very important. It's Canadian County, Custer County, Blaine County.
Yes.
Where and it's I don't want to say funny, but it aligns with our demographics. That's where we have our highest number of tribal members living.
Yes.
And so it makes sense.
Yes, it does. And it's kudos to everybody on board that works through that process to make sure you're doing what's best, again, for your community members. And you don't look at your silos and say, well, this is just my deal, so I'm just going to worry about mine. So we mentioned this already, but are there any, what are some misconceptions about tribal transportation that you wish people understood? What are some misconceptions besides just being, you got to be tribal to use tribal transit?
I think that's the biggest misconception is we are a public service and we are open to the general public. It's not just tribal members. And honestly, we hope this message gets out there because our funding is based on our ridership data. Mm-hmm. So the more riders we have on our vehicles, whether it's our fixed route or our demand response, the more funding we get to see these goals through. The more funding the tribes receive to continue our services for years to come.
Yes.
And so we're currently under operating grants, and the more operating funds we get, the more drivers we can hire. The capital assisted grants, the more vehicles we can purchase. So that all plays an important role. And it's unique how one affects the other. And until you're in this position, if you were in my position, you would see how it all together, you would see all the pieces of puzzles. And I know other transit agencies understand what I'm talking about, but our general public, the people that we serve, the clients that we serve, they probably do not see how those pieces of the puzzles fit together. So yes, ridership impacts our ability to go after funding, to secure operating funding, to continue to hire more drivers. Riderships affects the funding for capital assistance grants, so we can buy more vehicles to say, hey, we have a greater need. We're not meeting that need. We're maybe 50, 60% of reaching that need, and here are the numbers to show you we have a need.
Yes.
And so the more ridership we receive or see on the, so yes, that misconception that we're only in here for tribal members, I definitely want to reiterate that yes, we're open to the public. You don't have to have a CDIB card to get on our transit services. We don't ask for one. It is helpful to know who the tribal members are. They do collect it for data reasons, but not for services.
Right.
And so yes, that I really wish we could say in our advertisements, it is geared for preferential treatment for our tribal members, especially when we talk about demand response.
Right.
So they are asked questions. There are dispatchers about that, but otherwise, I mean, we're not allowed to decline services to anybody unless they violated one of the rules that we have within our system. The other thing that I mentioned is the misconception that I mentioned earlier is we're not a taxi service.
Yes.
Our drivers are hardworking individuals. They deal with a lot, and we want our drivers to be treated respectfully. And so we do have some rules for our riders, but courteousness, respectfulness, somebody violates the rules, it does lead to services being suspended for a little while, like a cool-off period. And we have guidelines that we have to go through. And so, I just ask the clients, the people that we serve, to be nice to our drivers.
Yeah.
We try to recognize them and give them some relief every once in a while and give them days off.
And it goes back to wanting to make your drivers happy.
Yes.
Because happy drivers will last longer than unhappy drivers.
Yes.
So you've mentioned this multiple times, especially when you first started, but what is the most rewarding thing that you have working with public transportation?
Okay, if I start choking up,
okay, wait a
because
second.
I get emotional.
I cry.
I get emotional because it's a pride as an individual that has worked for an agency as long as I have to continue to see the growth in us in the transit program, trying to keep up with that growth and maintaining the services that we provide. So sustainability, when you talk about sustainability, that's part of planning. And it's not like there was a clear picture of what the future holds. Even back then in 2008, 2009, and 2010 when we first started, we just knew there were services out there. And so I want to say the most rewarding thing I get out of the tribal transit program is the people. From the people that we serve to the programs that we work with, the agencies that we work with, like the Indian Health Services, to our elected officials, our legislative branch, our executive office. They support the resolutions that we put before them that are there to support a grant application. And their support, seeing the vision, when I present to the different agencies and the programs, this is the direction we're going with this. We're trying to meet this need, but that support we receive from our executive and legislative branch to pass resolutions that support these grants, go after this funding, that ultimately come back to create jobs. So one of the things I will say that I'm proud of is we do plan ahead and we try to determine how we're going to sustain it long term. And so usually it goes over well when I'm presenting something to the executive and legislative branch to say, we're not asking you for any funding. We're just asking you for a resolution to support this grant. We're not asking the tribes for additional money to do this. There's money there that we can go after to do this. It's just getting the resolution and getting the grant to reflect what those needs are and how we're going to meet those needs. And so through that experience, it's really helped me with having a positive rapport with the decision makers for the tribes, as well as ensuring me being accountable to the ones that I've hired to run these programs. So like Wilma and her staff, her drivers, I'm going to always look out for you to make sure we continue this progress or this process. I take it very serious, and I want to see the success of the program. I never want to see it fail. And so, again, going back to what I said before, it's my baby.
Yes.
Transit is my baby because I applied for the grants to bring it to the tribes. I don't want to see it fail. And so, mind me if I get emotional, it's very important for me to be actively involved, proactively involved with the transit program and the success that it's bringing to the tribes.
Well, and again, kudos, because I have been majorly impressed with my relationship with you guys, with your ability to work with me with some of my haphazard, crazy ideas, giving me some suggestions and help me out, and just the things that you do for our community. And when you hear people that have taken your transit and how happy they are when, and these are clients
right.
that I speak to, because I speak to these clients on a regular basis as well.
Right.
And they love it and they're happy. And so that's what makes me excited to refer you guys to my clients. And it's an amazing program that y'all have created here. So
that's good to know, because we're not in it for the accolades. We're not in it for the pat on the back. But if I meet one individual that comes up to me and says, thank you for that, it means so much to me. And I can walk away like, okay, we accomplished something.
And most of the time you don't hear that, the accolades.
Yeah,
you hear the complaints,
yes,
but you don't hear the positives on the other side of that. But I actually do. So, I just want you guys to know that you are making a difference. That means a lot. Like I said, I don't know how many times that Wilma and I have visited about potential projects and ideas and what are the struggles and what are the positives. And, so it is something that's important. But is there anything else you want to add that I didn't cover?
I believe I've covered most of what I could, with even expressing the services that we provide, some of the routes that we cover within our western and northwestern part of Oklahoma. Give us time. We're going to get the other 2 routes out. We definitely want to have 5 fixed routes going. I will say, right now we have no fares. Get on there and
free fares.
Yes, get on there and just ride it for one day and see where it takes you and how far you get over and get back. But educate yourself with the routes, but take advantage of it while it's free, because eventually, as costs go up, that's one of the things we're dealing with is the economy right now. We are seeing an increase in ridership, but down the road, our fare, we might have to implement a fare down the road. But right now, we are free to the public. We have several grants that we need to utilize, and so by not collecting fare at this time, so it helps us spend the funding that we do have. Even through this podcast, we're hoping that we can encourage others to get on our transit and understand that it is open to the public. It's not just specific to tribal members. And so hopefully we'll see an increase in ridership. But yeah, take advantage of it while it's free. Yes. We have no fare right now. So
yeah, and that is something that's very important, because I had a gentleman the other day and I was like, well, your local transit, it's only like $1 in town. And they said, well, I have 38 cents to my name. This is a real situation for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So yes, definitely take advantage of the free services right now, especially the fixed route.
Yes.
That would be an incredible, and work your schedules around the fixed route. Plan ahead, think about making that appointment and planning it through the fixed route. So what is a way that people could learn more about your program? And I know that you have kind of a long website address, but I will put this on the actual flyer so that they will be able to see it. But what is that?
Okay, so they can go to our website. It's www.cheyenneandarapaho-transportation/tribal-transit.
Yes. And I will put that on the deal, because there's no way that I would be able to.
Yeah, if you're going to have that, I would do the QR code. We have them on our, like I said, we recently just printed out some postcard size information brochures, and on the front side it has all of our contact and a QR code that will get you to our website. Perfect. And on the back side, one of them has all our fixed route schedules with the times that we stop, and then we have other postcards for each of the routes. So we have a ceiling fixed route that has a morning schedule and the afternoon schedule, and then a map of where the stops are. I want to say, I believe we printed 200 or 300 of these, and they're out different locations at Indian
Okay.
Health facilities. We've delivered some to locations in Clinton along our route stops, and Sealing, Hammond, Elk City. Our drivers have been distributing these little postcards out to let the tribal members know, and they're free.
Yeah,
Grab images, grab them, share them. Go to our website. You can use the QR code and it'll pull up the bus schedule. And so as we grow, like I said, we're trying to do more promotions, more marketing of our programs, and let the public know what our services are. And so I really thank you for being here and helping us with that effort. So.
I think the privilege is more mine to be able to be here, but I do appreciate it very much, Angela. And as always, I enjoy having these podcasts because I feel like Western Oklahoma is so important in the way that we work together. And I just want to highlight some of the awesome programs we have.
With that, I want to say, I believe you're doing a good job. We've never had somebody come to us and ask us to be included. And so once we feel included, that inclusiveness, I think it builds from there. I think we all grow from that. And so I'm excited for what the future holds.
I'm super excited. Well, thank you, Angela, and I do appreciate it. And again, thank you for joining me today and all the great information that we got today. And I will put your website information along with the QR code so that people can access your information.
We do have a toll-free number, 1-800-247-4612. And then once you get to the operator, dial extension 32600. It'll get you to our transit dispatcher. So
perfect.
It's another way to contact us.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, because some people like the computer thing and some people just want to call.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Mobility Matters. Remember, transportation is more than just getting from point A to point B. It's access to opportunity, health, education, and connection. When people are left without reliable transportation, they're left behind. But together, through advocacy, innovation, and listening to the voices of those most impacted, as well as those working to solve the transportation issues, we can pave a path towards equity. Thanks for riding along with us. Until next time, keep moving forward and let's keep the conversation going.